Jack Taylor had worked his whole life to build something he could be proud of, a small but beloved restaurant that became a favorite spot for locals. The smells of fresh bread, sizzling steaks, and rich sauces filled the air as soon as people walked through the door. The restaurant had been Jack's dream from the very beginning. He had invested everything, his time, his money, and his heart, into creating the perfect place where people could enjoy a delicious meal and feel at home. He poured all his energy into making the restaurant successful, from creating special dishes to building strong relationships with his customers. But over the years, things had started to change. The neighborhood had grown busier, and with more restaurants opening up, Jack's place no longer stood out the way it once did. There were new, trendy spots around town that drew in a younger crowd, while Jack's cozy, old-fashioned restaurant seemed to fall behind. Despite his best efforts, the numbers didn't add up. The bills piled up higher than the money coming in. Jack found himself making desperate decisions just to keep things afloat, trying to compete with newer businesses that had more money and bigger marketing budgets. The stress was wearing him down. He spent sleepless nights staring at spreadsheets, hoping for a miracle, but nothing changed. His loyal regulars still came, but it wasn't enough to pay the bills. Jack couldn't afford the repairs the building needed, and his suppliers had started demanding payment up front. He watched helplessly as the dream he had worked so hard for slipped further and further away. The worst part was telling his wife, Laura, and their 2 kids that the restaurant would have to close. They had always believed in his vision, but now they were facing the reality that everything was falling apart. When Jack made the difficult decision to declare bankruptcy, it felt like he had lost everything. The paperwork was final, the debts too big to overcome. He walked out of the restaurant for the last time with a heavy heart, knowing it would likely be sold to someone else. It wasn't just the loss of the restaurant that hurt. It was the feeling of failure, the idea that all his hard work had amounted to nothing. He had poured his life into this place, and now it was over. That night, after locking the door for the final time, Jack stood outside the restaurant, the rain drizzling down. He wasn't sure where to go or what to do next. Everything seemed uncertain. As he was about to head home, feeling lost and defeated, he noticed something that caught his attention. A man and a little girl were sitting near the entrance, their heads down, huddling together to escape the rain. They didn't have an umbrella, and they looked cold and tired. Jack's heart went out to them. He wasn't sure why, but something in him decided to do something he never would have considered before: offer them shelter. Jack wasn't sure why he did it. Maybe it was the way the little girl, Emma, looked up at him with tired eyes, or how the rain seemed to fall even harder that night. Whatever the reason, Jack's heart told him to act. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was a foolish thing to do. But then he walked over to the man and girl. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, his voice softer than usual. The man looked up, surprised, then quickly tried to stand up, wiping the rain from his face. "I'm sorry, sir. We're just looking for a place to stay for the night," the man said, his voice low and filled with shame. Jack could tell that this man, David, was embarrassed by their situation, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet desperation, that Jack couldn't ignore. He glanced at the little girl, Emma, who was bundled up in a threadbare coat, her hair damp from the rain. "I don't have much to offer," Jack said, thinking of his own struggles, but still feeling a pull to help. "But you can stay here, in the back room, just for tonight. It's not much, but it'll keep you out of the rain." David looked at Jack, stunned. "Really? Are you sure?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, I'm not using it, and it's better than being outside." David seemed to hesitate for a moment before he finally nodded. "Thank you. You don't know what this means." Jack led them inside, unlocking the door to the back storage room where he used to keep extra supplies. It wasn't a luxurious place, just a small room with old boxes and unused kitchen equipment. But it was dry and warm, and that was all that mattered. Jack grabbed an old blanket from one of the shelves and handed it to David. "Here, this should help. "I'll bring you something to eat in a bit," Jack offered, his voice more comforting than he felt inside. Despite the restaurant's failure, the one thing he still had was his kindness, and he wasn't about to let go of that. David thanked him again, and Jack left the room, his mind racing. What had he gotten himself into? He had his own family to take care of, his own problems to fix. Yet as he walked through the quiet restaurant, something in his heart felt lighter. He couldn't explain it, but helping David and Emma felt like the right thing to do. Maybe this was the kind of thing he had been missing. The chance to do something good, even if it didn't solve all of his problems. Jack headed to the kitchen and made a quick meal for the two of them. When he returned to the back room, he was met with a sight that warmed him. David and Emma were sitting on the floor, Emma resting her head against her father's shoulder, both of them looking relieved just to be out of the cold. "I hope this helps," Jack said as he handed them the meal. They both smiled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Jack felt a sense of peace settle over him. It wasn't much, but he knew it was the right thing to do. That night, Jack slept a little better than he had in weeks. He still didn't know what the future held for his restaurant, but helping David and Emma had brought him something unexpected: hope. The next few days passed by quickly, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that his life had changed in some way. David and Emma stayed in the back room of the restaurant, and Jack found himself visiting them more often than he expected. He would drop by with meals, chat for a while, and sometimes just sit in the quiet, listening to the sound of Emma's soft laughter or David's deep voice telling stories about the past. It was the first time in weeks that Jack had felt like he was part of something real again, something that mattered. Jack learned that David hadn't always been homeless. He had been a mechanic, working a steady job for years. He had a small apartment, a few friends, and a sense of security. But life had thrown him curveballs. First, a major car accident left him injured, unable to work. Then, his wife passed away unexpectedly, leaving him alone with Emma. After that, the bills piled up, and without a steady income, David couldn't keep up. He lost his job, his apartment, and eventually, his hope. Despite everything that had happened, David still held onto a certain pride. He wasn't looking for pity, just a chance to get back on his feet. "I'm not asking for a handout," David told Jack one evening as they shared a meal. "I just want to get back to work, to give Emma the life she deserves. She's all I've got left." Jack could hear the pain in David's voice, but also the determination. He respected that. He understood what it meant to fight for something, even when the odds were stacked against you. Jack had been fighting for his restaurant for years. Even though it had failed, he knew what it was like to not give up. Over the next few weeks, Jack began to look forward to the little visits with David and Emma. They were grateful for the roof over their heads, but Jack could see that they didn't want to overstay their welcome. David, in particular, felt like he should be doing more. One day, he asked Jack if he could help out around the restaurant in any way. "I've been a mechanic, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes," David said earnestly. "I can clean, run errands, anything." Jack thought about it for a moment. The restaurant was in poor shape, and though he was slowly starting to accept the idea of letting go, he still had a small part of him that wasn't ready to quit. Maybe David could help. Jack said slowly, "I could use an extra hand in the kitchen. I'm not sure what the future holds for this place, but if you're willing to help, I'd appreciate it." David's face brightened, and Jack saw a spark of hope in his eyes. It was the first time in weeks that Jack had seen someone genuinely excited about doing something, anything, that could bring them back to life. As the days passed, David became a regular helper in the kitchen. At first, he wasn't much of a cook, but he was quick to learn, and Jack enjoyed teaching him some basic skills. He was amazed at how much David seemed to enjoy being part of something again, how the small tasks, like chopping vegetables or washing dishes, seemed to bring him a sense of purpose. And Emma, though only 8, wasn't left out. She had a knack for organizing things, helping Jack sort through some of the old menus and paperwork that had piled up over the months. Jack was surprised by how quickly she picked things up, and it was clear that, despite their struggles, Emma was a smart, bright child who had more hope in her heart than most adults. For the first time in what felt like forever, Jack began to see his restaurant in a different light. It wasn't just a business anymore. It was a place of hope, of new beginnings. And although his future was uncertain, Jack couldn't help but feel like something bigger was at play. As the days turned into weeks, Jack's restaurant slowly started to feel like it was alive again. The sound of cooking filled the kitchen, and the familiar smell of garlic and spices began to drift through the air once more. Though the place was still in need of repairs, the warmth of David and Emma's presence made everything feel a little brighter. It wasn't much, but it was something. Jack began to notice the small changes. The spark in David's eyes when he learned a new recipe, the way Emma smiled when she helped organize the dining area. Slowly, the restaurant, which had once felt like a burden, began to feel like home again. One morning, as Jack was preparing the restaurant for what he hoped would be a busy day, a familiar face walked through the door. It was Kathy, a longtime customer who had been coming to the restaurant for years. She had always been a regular, someone who'd enjoyed the cozy atmosphere and Jack's signature dishes. But over time, she had stopped coming around, as the restaurant's business declined. "Jack," Kathy said with a warm smile as she stepped inside. "I've heard some things. It's good to see you still around." Jack, a bit surprised but happy to see her, greeted her warmly. "Good to see you too, Kathy. It's been a while. Things haven't exactly been easy, but we're still here." Kathy took a seat by the window, as she always did, and Jack took her order. As he made her favorite dish, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope stirring inside him. Even though the restaurant was far from perfect, there were still people who cared about it, who remembered the good times they'd had there. Jack began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, things weren't as hopeless as they seemed. After her meal, Kathy stopped Jack before he could clear her plate. "Jack, I've been hearing about what you're doing. Helping that man and his little girl. That's something special," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "Not a lot of people would do that. I've been thinking about it, and I want to help." Jack looked at Kathy, unsure of what she meant. "Help? How?" Kathy smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "Well, I've got a bakery down the street, and I've got more than enough food to spare. How about I start bringing you some fresh bread and pastries each morning? It'll save you some money, and it'll give you a little something extra to offer your customers. I know it's not much, but I think it could make a difference." Jack was speechless for a moment. He hadn't expected anything like this, but he was grateful. Kathy didn't have to do this. She wasn't even asking for anything in return. She just wanted to help, and Jack could see the sincerity in her offer. "That's incredibly generous of you," Jack said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know what to say. Thank you." Kathy waved him off, smiling. "Don't mention it. I'm just glad to see you still hanging in there. Keep doing what you're doing. It's making a difference." Over the next few days, Kathy's daily deliveries of fresh bread and pastries arrived at the restaurant. The new items were a hit with the customers, and the once empty shelves in the kitchen started to fill up again. Jack was able to save some money, and slowly he started to get more creative with the menu, adding some of Kathy's baked goods to his dishes. The restaurant began to gain a little momentum. It wasn't a huge change overnight, but Jack could feel the shift. The buzz around town was starting to grow, and soon, more people came in, curious about the little place that had been getting attention for all the right reasons. What made it different now wasn't just the food. It was the story behind it. People admired the way Jack had opened his doors to a homeless family and turned his own struggles into a beacon of hope for others. And with each passing day, Jack began to see something he hadn't expected. The restaurant wasn't just surviving. It was starting to thrive, little by little, in its own quiet way. It wasn't about the money or the success. It was about something deeper, something more meaningful. Jack had found his purpose again, not just in the restaurant, but in the lives he was touching. And it felt good. One afternoon, a week after Kathy had started supplying Jack with fresh baked goods, something extraordinary happened. Jack had been working in the kitchen, preparing the evening special when the doorbell chimed. He turned around, expecting a regular customer, but instead, a stranger walked in, dressed in a smart jacket and holding a notebook. The man introduced himself as Charles Reynolds, a food critic from the local newspaper. Jack was taken aback. He hadn't expected anyone like that to show up at his door, not with the restaurant still in its recovery stage. But Charles was calm and polite, with a warm smile that made Jack feel a little at ease. "I've heard a lot of good things about this place recently," Charles said, his voice friendly. "I wanted to see for myself what's been going on here." Jack wasn't sure if it was a good idea to have someone like him in the restaurant at this point. After all, the place wasn't exactly at its best. There were still some cracks in the walls, the furniture was old, and the decor was tired. But he knew he couldn't back down now. He invited Charles to sit and told him that he would personally prepare a meal for him. As Jack worked, he couldn't help but feel a mix of nervousness and excitement. He had put so much of his heart into his cooking, but now, with this unexpected visit, everything felt like it was on the line. He couldn't help but wonder what would happen if the critic didn't like the food. Would it mean the end for his little restaurant? But as he served the meal, something changed. Charles took his first bite, then his second. Jack held his breath, waiting for some sign of approval or disapproval. After what felt like an eternity, Charles put down his fork and looked up at Jack, a smile spreading across his face. "This is incredible," Charles said, his tone genuine. "You've really created something special here. It's clear you've put your heart into this food. I can taste it. This place deserves more recognition than it's been getting." Jack could hardly believe his ears. For the first time in months, he felt a rush of hope. The critic was impressed. It wasn't just the food. It was the story behind the restaurant, the hard work, and the heart that had gone into keeping it alive. Charles told Jack he would write an article for the local paper, praising the food, the atmosphere, and especially the way Jack had turned things around. The article, published the following week, was a game changer. It wasn't just a review. It was a story of resilience, of a man who refused to give up on his dream. The article highlighted Jack's generosity in offering a safe space to David and Emma, and how that simple act of kindness had sparked a transformation in the restaurant. It wasn't just about the food anymore. It was about community, hope, and the power of second chances. As the weeks went by, the restaurant started to fill up again. People from all over town came to see what all the buzz was about. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. And soon, Jack had more customers than he had in years. The once empty tables now had families, couples, and even people from nearby offices enjoying lunch and dinner. The restaurant was buzzing with energy, and Jack felt like he had a new lease on life. David and Emma were a huge part of the success. David continued to help in the kitchen, learning new skills and contributing his own creativity to the menu. Emma, with her bright smile and enthusiasm, helped out with organizing the dining area and interacting with customers. The trio had become an unlikely team, and their bond was unbreakable. The success didn't just stop at business. Jack's life had transformed as well. He felt the weight of his past struggles lifting off his shoulders. He no longer saw his restaurant as a place of failure, but as a place of hope, a place where dreams could be reborn. What had started as a small, quiet act of kindness had blossomed into something bigger than he ever imagined. As the months passed, Jack began to feel like his life was on a better path. The restaurant, once on the brink of closure, had become a local favorite. With the help of David and Emma, the food quality had improved, and Jack had regained his confidence. Every day, he woke up excited about what the day might bring. His dream wasn't lost anymore. It was growing, evolving, and it was filled with a new kind of purpose. One afternoon, while Jack was busy in the kitchen, Emma ran into the back, her eyes wide with excitement. "Dad's fixing the roof," she exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. Jack blinked, surprised. "What do you mean, fixing the roof?" Emma waved her hands. "He's up on the roof, repairing it. He said it's going to help keep the rain out, and we can't keep asking for help forever." Jack felt a rush of pride. David had always insisted on doing things himself, despite his past troubles, and now here he was, working on the restaurant's roof, making sure everything was secure. Jack had never imagined that someone who had struggled so much could be so determined to rebuild not just his own life, but this place too. Later that afternoon, Jack took a break from the kitchen and walked outside to check on David. He found him on the roof, hammering away at a section that had been leaking for months. The weather was turning cooler, and David was sweating despite the chill in the air. But he didn't stop. Jack admired his work ethic. David was giving everything he had, not only for himself but for Jack, for Emma, and for the restaurant. "You know, you really don't have to do that," Jack called up to him. David paused and looked down. "I'm doing this because I want to, Jack. You gave us a chance when no one else would. This is my way of giving back." Jack stood there for a moment, touched by David's words. It was more than just fixing a roof. It was about taking responsibility, about finding a way to stand up again after life had knocked you down. And David was doing it, one nail at a time. That night, after the roof was patched up, the restaurant was as busy as ever. More customers came in, and the atmosphere was lively with laughter and chatter. Jack couldn't help but smile as he watched everyone enjoying their meals. The place was full, not just with customers, but with a sense of pride and hope. Later that evening, after the last customer had left and the restaurant had quieted down, Jack sat down at one of the tables. He took a deep breath, letting the satisfaction of the day wash over him. It was then that he realized how far they had come. The restaurant was thriving again, and the challenges that had once seemed impossible were now just part of the past. David and Emma had become more than just people Jack had helped. They had become family. They had a bond that went beyond the walls of the restaurant. They had lifted each other up during difficult times, shared struggles and triumphs, and had made the restaurant their own in ways that Jack had never expected. Jack's mind drifted to the future. What would happen next? He didn't know for sure, but he no longer feared it. He was no longer alone in this. With David, Emma, and the community that had rallied around them, Jack knew they could face whatever came their way. In the meantime, he was determined to keep moving forward. The restaurant had become a symbol of second chances, not just for him, but for anyone who walked through the door. It was more than just a place to eat. It was a place to start over, to heal, and to believe in new possibilities. Jack had learned that no matter how broken things seemed, there was always a chance to rebuild. As time went on, Jack began to realize how much the restaurant had become a part of him. It wasn't just about serving food anymore. It was about giving people a place where they could feel welcomed, where they could feel like they mattered. He thought back to all the times he had struggled alone, doubting his decisions, wondering if it was even worth trying. But now, with David and Emma by his side, he felt different. He felt like he wasn't alone anymore. One day, as Jack was cleaning up after the lunch rush, a young woman walked into the restaurant. She looked around, her eyes scanning the walls, before she approached Jack. She seemed nervous but determined. "Hi, I'm Sophia," she said with a shy smile. "I heard about your story and how you helped a family in need. I was hoping you might have some work available. I don't have much experience, but I'm willing to learn." Jack looked at her for a moment, recognizing the same determination he had seen in David when he first started helping. It wasn't just the restaurant that had changed. It was the way the community had come together, how everyone seemed to find their way back to hope. He couldn't help but admire that. "Well, we're always looking for help around here," Jack said, giving her a kind smile. "Why don't you start by helping us with some basic tasks? If it works out, we can talk about more responsibilities." Sophia's face lit up, grateful for the chance. "Thank you so much. I promise I'll do my best." Over the next few weeks, Sophia proved herself to be a quick learner. She worked hard and asked questions whenever she didn't understand something. Jack appreciated her work ethic and the fresh energy she brought into the restaurant. It was clear that she wasn't just looking for a job. She was looking for a fresh start, just like everyone else who had walked through the door. One evening after the dinner service, Jack sat down with David and Emma to talk about what they had accomplished so far. The restaurant was busier than it had ever been. The community was supporting them. The food was getting better every day, and the atmosphere was full of warmth and positivity. But Jack knew they had more to do. "I've been thinking," Jack started, looking at David and Emma. "We've come so far, and we've got more people than ever walking through these doors. Maybe it's time we take a step forward and really build this place into something that helps more people, something that offers more than just a meal. Maybe we can help more people like we helped you too." David nodded thoughtfully. "You know, that's a great idea. People need more than food. They need support too." Emma, who had been listening quietly, spoke up with a small smile. "Maybe we could offer classes or even a job training program for people who need work. We can help them learn skills, just like you helped us." Jack looked at them both, feeling a sense of pride swelling in his chest. This wasn't just about a restaurant anymore. It was about creating the community that worked together, that supported each other through tough times. It was about offering second chances to those who needed them most. With that in mind, Jack decided to take a leap of faith. He started reaching out to local organizations and businesses, asking for help with the idea of turning his restaurant into a place that offered more than just food. They would provide job training for people who had fallen on hard times, teach them skills that would help them get back on their feet. The idea was to create a program where people could learn and grow, just like David and Emma had done. As he made those calls, Jack couldn't help but think about how far he had come. It wasn't just about the restaurant. It was about building something that could make a difference in the world. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but with the help of David, Emma, Sophia, and the community, Jack felt more hopeful than he ever had before. The restaurant had started as a place of survival, but now it was becoming a place of transformation. It was a place where people could rebuild, learn, and find the strength to start over. And Jack knew that this was just the beginning. Months passed, and Jack's vision for the restaurant had begun to take shape in ways he hadn't imagined. The community support had grown stronger than ever, and word of the restaurant's new mission spread far and wide. People from all walks of life, some looking for work and others simply seeking a place of belonging, came to the restaurant not only for a meal, but for the opportunity to turn their lives around. Jack, David, Emma, and Sophia worked tirelessly to build what had now become a unique program, a job training and support initiative that helped people gain valuable skills. They offered lessons in cooking, customer service, and basic business management. Some of the people who had once walked through the restaurant's door, unsure of their next step, now stood behind the counter, proudly serving others. They were gaining confidence and learning trades they could use to support themselves. One of the greatest successes was Linda, a woman who had been struggling to make ends meet for years. She had walked into the restaurant one rainy afternoon, hesitant, like so many others. But after a few weeks of training, Linda was not only a valued member of the team, but also took on a leadership role in managing the front of the house. Her transformation was nothing short of inspiring. Her story was one of many that proved the restaurant's mission was making a tangible difference. Jack couldn't help but feel immense pride as he watched the people who had once been lost in their struggles grow stronger every day. He had never expected this restaurant to become a beacon of hope for so many, but it had. And he knew that none of it would have been possible without David and Emma. David, still fixing up the building whenever needed, had become like a brother to Jack. The two of them often worked late into the night, not just on repairs, but on brainstorming new ideas to improve the restaurant and its community impact. Emma, too, had taken on a significant role. Her natural charm and people skills had helped the restaurant gain loyal customers. Her ability to make every person who entered feel welcome had become one of the restaurant's defining qualities. Then, one day, something happened that Jack had been hoping for but hadn't fully expected. A group of local business owners reached out to him. They had heard about the restaurant's work in the community and were eager to help. They offered financial support to help expand the program, providing scholarships for people who wanted to attend culinary school or other vocational courses. Jack was overwhelmed by the generosity. It was clear that the restaurant's mission was making a ripple effect, inspiring others to give back. Jack stood in the middle of the restaurant, looking around at the people he had come to know so well. He thought back to the days when the place had felt like an empty shell, a space filled with uncertainty. But now it was alive with the laughter of families, the clinking of glasses, and the smell of fresh food. It was more than a restaurant. It was a symbol of second chances, a place where people could rewrite their stories. David approached Jack as the day was winding down. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" he said, looking around at the bustling restaurant. Jack smiled, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Yeah, we really have. I never imagined it would be like this. You, Emma, and everyone who's come through here have made it all possible." David placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "We did it together. You gave us a chance when we needed it the most. And now we're all part of something bigger than any of us." As Jack looked around, he realized that the restaurant had not only changed his life, it had changed the lives of so many others. And it was continuing to grow, continuing to offer hope and opportunity to those who needed it most. Jack had once thought he was just running a restaurant, but he had built something far more meaningful, a community, a family, and a place of transformation. It wasn't just the meals that mattered. It was the love and support that went into every plate, every conversation, and every decision. And as long as there were people who needed a second chance, Jack knew that the restaurant would keep growing, offering that chance again and again.